Alberta and the federal government have reportedly agreed on a memorandum of understanding about the province's energy future, the full details of which will be released on Thursday, but supposedly it contains both an agreement on a new pipeline and also some exemptions for the province from federal environmental laws. This MOU is very interesting because it simultaneously is a slap in the face to any kind of climate commitments that Canada has made, while also effectively not really doing anything. When it comes to exemptions from federal law, the first major one is an exemption from the greenhouse gas emissions cap. The second is agreeing to amend the law that prevents companies from making false or misleading claims. Essentially, it's a greenwashing law that Alberta and industry has long opposed, and the federal government has agreed to simply let them lie. In exchange, Alberta will agree to the new carbon pricing system, which was a priority for the government, and they'll also do whatever they can to get the Pathways Alliance $16 billion carbon capture project done, which will mean spending another several billion dollars of taxpayer money to subsidize Pathways Alliance, who refuses to build the project unless it is at least 75% subsidized by the government. I just did a longer video about how carbon capture is a false solution, and the small emissions reductions that actually come from that $16 billion project, paid for primarily by you, the taxpayer, won't matter anyways if they do the big part of this MOU, which is building the Northwest Pipeline. However, even though the federal government in this MOU is pledging political support for the pipeline, it's not actually any closer to happening. Because there are a couple big things here. One, part of the MOU is that Alberta agrees to negotiate with BC about the pipeline, something that BC in the past was vehemently opposed to. Not to mention that BC has said that the pipeline would require the permission of coastal First Nations. But there's likely to be more resistance because the proposed tanker site, where the pipeline would eventually run to ship oil to other markets, is next to a rainforest. Not to mention that even if you get the permission of the coastal First Nations, you are building a pipeline from Alberta to the northwest coast of British Columbia, passing over the land of many other First Nations who will almost certainly oppose the pipeline, as they have been doing for quite some time. But finally, likely the biggest obstacle in the way of building this pipeline is that there's not a buyer. This is an interesting MOU in that the federal government is basically giving Alberta everything they've ever wanted without actually giving them anything. They've given them political support for a project that they have to negotiate with the same people they had to negotiate with anyways, BC and Indigenous nations, and agreed to amend or repeal some laws they were going to amend or repeal anyways. But this looks like a political win for Danielle Smith, who is set to speak in front of her party members in the coming days and say that they got what they wanted from the federal government, and maybe, just maybe, this might repair some of the relationship between Alberta and the feds.